All right, we are rolling. Welcome to the Rich CELENZA show. WTF are you talking about? I'm Rich CELENZA, and I have a guest today. It's a very old close friend of mine, Miguel Martinez.
Hello. What's happening, Rich?
He's Cuban.
Cubano.
Cubano.
From the motherland.
He's deep.
Yep.
So I'm going to get into later how we kind of met and all that, but I think it's going on 30 years. I've known you almost.
It's going on 30 years probably, yeah. Yeah, 30 years.
It's crazy. And I don't want to get into all our crazy antics in the past, which we may do with a couple other friends, I think. But what I want to jump into today is regarding Miguel and his son. So Miguel's son is an exceptional baseball player, athlete that was born and raised in Orlando, Florida. Went on to do some incredible things. And the reason I'm doing this podcast, really, not only to introduce Miguel, but is to help people, which includes some even my closest friends now who have some really good athletes, sons that are in baseball. I have some that are in soccer. I have some that are in volleyball, and some other family members that want to get their kids to where I think Miguel took his son to. Right, in which I think, like a lot of parents, they want to take their child and, you know, as far as sports goes, and raise them the right way and get them a scholarship, I would say. Would you?
Yeah, but that was not the objective when we started out. The objective when we started, I want to get him involved in some kind of organized activity just to occupy his time. I remember growing up, we had a lot of free time, and free time, idle time meant getting in trouble time. And, you know, you're sitting around in the neighborhood with the kids, and it's like, what do we do now? Look, there's cars coming. Let's go get some rocks and throw rocks at cars or whatever. You know, I wanted to occupy his time so he wouldn't have a whole lot of idle time. And even back then, I mean, he's 20 years old now, but back then there was no distractions with the video games. They were not big with the kids. The Minecraft, and
they weren't raised with iPads or iPhones. That's what I always said. Our generation, our kids were the last one, I think, that still would go into a restaurant and do coloring books. Right?
Coloring books and whatever. And so my objective was to, you know, just keep him in organized activities so that, you know, take up his time and so that he would not be out there out in the streets when he got a little bit older. And sports was that avenue. And we initially started him in martial arts because that was like the first thing that we could get him in at 3 years old. And we got him in the Taekwondo.
I remember he could do the splits.
Yep, he could do
like
splits.
Like Van Damme?
Yep.
Like no joke. Like
Yep.
He was doing it all.
He was doing splits. And actually that kind of helped out when he started playing baseball because he started playing first base.
Right.
And first baseman, you know, got to stretch and split and whatever to try to get to the ball before the runner gets to the bag. But that was the objective with it when we started. It was never, you know, a scholarship or, you know, going and playing ball in college or beyond college or whatever. Now, that's his hope and his aspirations now that he's gotten to where he's at. But that was never my objective. And all little kids, when they're 5 years old, you ask them what they want to be, and if they're involved in some kind of sports, I want to be a pro that. Baseball player, football player, whatever.
Right.
Or they want to be a fireman or whatever. And he had similar, you know, dreams when he was a little guy. But for me, it was like, all right, let's just get to the next level, you know.
You just want him to have fun, like with my kids, right?
That was the most important thing. I wanted him to have fun and enjoy himself with sports. And so that's why we went down that road with him.
Why did you pick baseball?
Baseball is the game that I knew more of than anything else. I played a little football, played a little basketball growing up. And that's the thing about sports these days, too, is that everybody is so specialized. When we were growing up, it was seasonal. When it was football season, we played football. When it was basketball season and so forth. But baseball was a game that I loved more than any of the others, and I knew more about it. And so I was able to coach him. I could have coached him in football and Pop Warner or whatever, but I was able to coach him and spend, you know, that father-son time together and try to build on that relationship and that bond between, you know, the father and the son. So we started with the baseball. And early on, I realized that, you know, he was he was picking it up pretty good, and he was pretty decent at it. I remember he was 5 years old. We were playing. It was coach pitch, and most of the kids, you're as the coach pitching to the kids, you're trying to hit the bat, not so much them hitting the ball. You as a coach are trying to hit the bat.
Right.
Quentin and one other little boy, they had a gift for putting the bat on the ball. Right. And so early on, I realized, okay, well, maybe he's got something. We need to try to develop it.
Plus, he's a lefty.
And he's a lefty. And the lefty thing, I didn't realize it when we first started with baseball. I was trying to show him how to throw a ball.
Yeah.
And I was looking at him, and I'm like, you hold the ball like this. I'm holding the ball with my right hand. And
right.
He mirror imaged me, and he picked it up with his left.
Gotcha.
And I never tried to change anything.
Right.
And the same thing with the batting. I'm looking at him, and he's looking at and
right.
Hold the bat this way. I'm righty, and he would mirror image me, and that's how he picked up being a lefty. He's not naturally a lefty because now he writes right-handed. He eats right-handed.
Yeah.
He does, a lot of stuff right-handed, but baseball, he throws lefty and hits lefty. But
he can bat both ways though. Or
he could. But he was more comfortable lefty.
Gotcha.
He was more comfortable lefty, and so we try to develop that. We spend a lot of time on it. And my biggest challenge with a kid, picking up a sport and specializing in it at such a young age, is trying to make sure that he didn't burn out.
Of course.
Trying to keep it fun for him.
And fresh.
Keep it interesting.
Exactly.
And, not letting them burn out. And here in Florida, you play baseball all year round.
Yes.
So it's easy to see kids get burned out.
Sure.
Playing one sport. And
right.
so that was a challenge for me. I knew he loved the game, and I knew that he did well in it. But I just, needed to make sure that he didn't burn out, because I thought he had a little bit of he had a gift. He could do something with it, I thought.
Absolutely.
So as he got older, we just stayed with it. Then I started challenging him. The rec ball league at 5-6 years old just wasn't enough to challenge him.
Right.
So at 7, we went on and started playing competitive travel baseball, and then we ended up going all over the state, finding tournaments and
right.
Teams to play against. I formed a team, had some really good ball players on that team. To this day, I think I've got like 5 kids from that team that are playing D1 baseball.
Wow.
One kid is at Tulane. One kid is at Florida. He's starting shortstop at Florida.
Florida State?
Florida, University
of Florida. Gators. Sorry.
The Gators, yeah.
Yeah.
I got a kid who's playing shortstop at UCF. Quentin is going to be playing at Appalachian State. Those are all D1 schools. So, we had a really good team, and everywhere we went, we would just beat the snot out of everybody, and we'd win everything. And I had a kid who passed away a couple of years ago, who also was a UCF commit. So we had a really good team, and so I surrounded him with kids of equal ability, actually as good if not better ability than him, and so that they could push each other, challenge each other.
Right.
And they did just that. They all turned out to be really good ball players, and I suspect probably some of these kids will get a chance to go play at the next level, go play in the minor leagues, and maybe one might end up in the big leagues one day. But my aspirations, my hope was never. We never went into it thinking you're going to go play baseball in college or you're going to go play baseball. It always, that's what he wanted.
Right.
And so me as a father, it was to facilitate what he wants. Okay, he wants to try to do this. Me as a dad, okay, I got to try to facilitate. So how do we do that? So we spend a lot of time in the yard, a lot of times in the batting cages, a lot of times out at the field.
You're talking thousands of hours, though.
Oh, thousands of hours.
When
easily.
you're kind of making
easily.
Yeah. When your parent, when your son is that dedicated, well, you have to be almost just as dedicated, right? Because he can't get to where he needs to get to a lot of times without a parent. Let's call it for what it is, right?
Right.
Now let's go back to when he was younger, because I remember visiting your house. You had a new house. You showed me your son's room. Literally, the trophies were as tall as him.
Not taller than him. Yeah.
A lot of them were taller than him. So when he was younger, so he started off, but here's one thing I wanted to ask you. So you're 6'4"?
Yeah,
6'5"?
probably shrunk a little bit, as I'm getting older, but yeah, 6'4", 6'3.5", 6'4", yeah.
All right, your wife is 5'9" or 5'10"?
Yep.
Sorry if there's a little background audio there. We just got some people rocking and rolling in and out here, but it should end soon. So do you think, though, let's just take from a genetic standpoint, because you could tell your son, or at least I could tell, I'm not saying he's a man boy or a boy man or whatever the hell they call that. He looked more advanced physically, even mentally, than a lot of kids I saw at his age. Like, let's speed up to high school. He graduated high school, what height, 6'4"?
He was about 6'4" in high school.
So let's say the height and the just you and your wife, again, the gifts you kind of give him genetically. Did you see that when you were younger, or when he was younger?
No.
Or because you told me at one time he had a big growth spurt and then he balanced off, but then he had another growth spurt, right? Or
yeah.
something like that?
Early on, he was pretty big relative to kids his age and size, and I'm talking about early on when he was like 5 and 6 years old, 7 years old, maybe at 8. Then he started to like kind of stop growing. I was a late bloomer growing, and he stopped growing. When he entered high school, he was 5'4", weighed like 95 pounds. And in high school, he grew a foot and gained about another 95 pounds. It was a totally different kid from his freshman year to his senior year. And whereas a lot of kids, they'll hit puberty early on, and some of these kids at 13 years old look like, almost like men. I remember we were playing in a tournament. Quentin was 14 years old, probably 5'3", 5'4",
right.
And there's a kid on the mound who's got a full-grown beard and is probably 6 foot tall, and I'm like, wow. And the kid threw pretty good for a 14-year-old. I mean, he was throwing 80, mid-80s.
Right.
But I'm like, this is that kid's glory years, because he's done growing. That kid probably stopped growing 2 years ago.
Right.
Whereas I knew that my son was going to continue to grow. He just had a late growth spurt. But yeah, we're both pretty large. I mean, pretty tall people. And so I knew it was going to happen. Just when would that growth spurt happen?
Right.
So we just had to wait it out. And it came, in his high school years. So
that's crazy. I had a growth spurt. I graduated high school only at 135 pounds, and literally a year later I was like 220 pounds. Which I don't know. That's when I met you. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like that. If I would, and I was only 17 when I was in high school. If I would have been 18, I would have literally went from like wrestling 138 to being a heavyweight at 220, and my strength just was off the chart compared to what I was. Still one of the strongest bench pressers or strongest kids in my high school, but I literally would have went to a whole different level. My father's so pissed off he didn't either put me in a year later or start me school late, because I was still pretty dominant in sports. But I get the whole growth thing, because I think a lot of parents, and you know this too, I think they put their kids in school maybe a year later so they get that extra year. Right? Don't you think sometimes they do that? So instead of starting kindergarten at, say, 4.5, 5.5, they're at 6.5, or 6.
Yep. Now we had there was kids in baseball that do that. In baseball and sports, it seems like you see a lot of that where parents will either start their kids, when they normally do, and then they'll realize, okay, either I'll hold them back a year, or he's not growing as much, so they hold him back for sports. The kid's pretty good at sports, but they'll hold him back, and just to give him another year to develop athletically. And I was always, again, my son was a late bloomer, but I was always of the opinion that, hey, look, if he's going to be an athlete, he's just going to have to work hard at it. I'm not going to hold him back. I'm going to try to get him off my dime as quickly as I can. If I hold him back another year, then I got to pay, for his stuff for another year. But no, it was, he's just going to have to work his butt off. And it was good for him to be undersized early on, because it taught him that you got to bust your butt to compete with that bearded guy who's 14 years old.
Right.
And so he learned, the work ethic. because he had to, in order to compete with these guys that were hitting puberty at a younger age.
Right.
And had the testosterone flowing through their system a little bit sooner. But yeah, we put thousands of hours in, and I taught him, the game, and but he put in the work.
Right.
I got to give him, he gets the credit for that because he had to put in the work.
Sure.
And there was times where I would challenge him and question him. Do you really want this? I'm like, because sometimes he wanted to be a kid.
Yeah.
And I would let him be a kid, but you can be a kid, but we still got to go out there and work, because you're gonna fall behind if you don't. I used to tell him, every day that you don't go and put in the time is a day that you lose. You can't make that day up. You don't get that day back.
That's absolutely. Especially when you're going to graduate at a certain amount of
Right.
time. It don't look like a lot now when you're 8th grade, but you blow off a year, 6
Right.
months, you're not getting it back.
Right. And every day is a missed opportunity. I mean, I used to tell them every day is a missed opportunity to try to get better. Every day you don't work out is a missed opportunity to not get better.
I always say that.
So
Absolutely. Even when working out with weights or anything. You miss a week, you know what I mean?
Right.
It's like putting you back a month.
Right.
I'm not kidding.
Right.
It takes months to get in shape. It takes weeks to get out of it.
it absolutely does.
Yeah, and it could be one day, too, that you learn something that could be a game changer in your life.
Right.
Two, that you don't realize opportunity-wise.
Right.
So
Right.
back to your son now when he was younger. So when I saw him, he was, what was he, first? He was doing first base originally?
He always did first base. He was a really good first baseman, yeah.
Yeah. And do you think, so now I see, as time went on, obviously when we were younger, it wasn't as serious sports. It wasn't as organized.
Mm-hmm.
I would say, especially, maybe I'm wrong because you were in it a lot deep, but even with my friends seeing like the last 15, maybe 20 years, you probably caught the beginning phase of this where sports became so high level for kids, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Where now there's like Cocoa Beach, like we're just talking about, there's a compound there. There's all this different shit going on where like they're facilitating like your kid was a pitcher, right? I think eventually you basically just started preparing your child to be a pitcher throughout high school, possibly college, the minors, whatever. Very specialized.
Right.
But it's not, it's a lifestyle, I guess, is what I should say.
Yeah, it is. With him, I mean, being a lefty, everybody always wanted him to pitch. At young ages, they wanted him to pitch.
How did you not blow his arm out real fast?
Because I was involved, and I
you
made
pulled
sure
him and made sure he was.
I made sure that I protected that arm, because even though he was a good first baseman and he hit well, he had a lot of power. Defensively, he was as good a first baseman as anybody that we've played against. I realized that his future, he could extend his career in baseball as a pitcher. Okay. And so I made sure that I protected that arm. There's guys out there that would throw their kids on the mound all day, every day, and let them throw and get the glory at 8 years old. And I'm like, well, it ain't about an 8-year-old baseball game. It's about this kid playing the game later in life. And I made sure that I protected his arm. We did a lot of stuff to develop the arm and to protect the arm, and I hardly threw him. I mean, we'd go play in a tournament, and maybe he would throw 2 innings in the tournament.
Did you think you coached him to protect him just as much it was to direct him? Because if you weren't coaching, you would, just in general, because if you weren't a coach, you probably wouldn't have as much, you're a parent on the outside compared to coaching, you're on the inside, right? I'm just saying. So
I coached him to develop him. I didn't try to protect him, other than the pitching part of it.
Right.
But no, we played a lot, and I'd teach him to play the game the right way. I mean, get in front of the ball.
Yeah.
Kids at an early age, some kids, become afraid of the ball. They get hit one time, and then they're afraid of it. They don't want to get in front of it. It wasn't to protect him. I always try to teach him to play the game the right way, and to play and to be, play it hard. And one thing that I did, baseball players generally are kind of soft. If that's all you do is play baseball.
Yeah.
Baseball players are kind of soft. When he was about 10 years old, I was like, we're gonna go play tackle football now. And my reason for that was I knew baseball players and stuff. I wanted to toughen him up a little bit.
Sure.
And I also wanted him to understand the difference between it hurting and being hurt.
Yeah.
Because there's a difference.
Right, and being sore.
You get hit with a baseball,
Exactly.
it hurts.
Of course.
It hurts, but you're not hurt. So,
Yeah.
get your butt to first base and get ready to, steal a bag or something.
Exactly.
But now you break an arm, well, now you're hurt.
Yes.
So there's a difference. But kids, a lot of times, especially in baseball, since they're kind of soft, they'll get hit with a ball and they think that, they're going to die.
Right.
I'm like, no, get up. You're not dead. You ain't been shot.
Yeah, right.
The ball hurts and
Sure.
so we put him in football for a couple of years and then he came one time and he's like, Dad, I don't want to play football anymore. I'm like, okay, that's fine.
Right.
Because I think we got out of it what we wanted to.
Sure.
He didn't know that that's what I was doing, why I was putting him in football.
True. Yeah.
But I told him since then I've told him, that's why we did it.
Yeah.
And, he was fine with it. So it was to toughen him up a little bit so that he, get a little aggressiveness. Again, baseball players, there's not a whole lot of physical contact with baseball players. And so
absolutely.
I want him
totally different.
Yeah.
Not hands-on.
Right.
Right. I'm just saying.
Yep.
It's not even basketball's a little more hands-on. You're getting banged around underneath the basket. Anything.
Right.
Baseball is a separate type of component, unless you're getting tagged out or something.
Yeah, and really the only time that there is really any kind of contact is, maybe a catcher.
Sure.
There's a play at the plate.
Yeah, right.
But that doesn't happen much. And the kids that I saw that were good catchers were kids that played football too.
Sure. They like that action too.
Yeah, and the kids that I used to see to run into the catchers that would try to knock them were the football player kids. They were not afraid of the contact.
Yeah, of course.
And so I remember one time my son, he was about 14 years old, and he's running. The coach called for a bunt. Was trying to move a guy over. He called for the bunt. Quentin lays down a bunt. He's running down to first base. The first baseman gets in his way. He kind of tries to get around him. He gets out, and he comes back. And I was like, "Don't you ever run out of that baseline. You run through that guy. If he's in your way, he's in that. You run through him." Next time he comes up the bat, a little weak hit to the shortstop. He's running down first base. There's a play at the bag. The guy does the same thing, tries to get out in front of the bag to keep him from getting to it. Quentin runs through him, knocks him on his butt. The kid's on the ground like, hey.
Right.
There was no infraction because he stayed in his baseline or whatever. So the things. For me, it was always to try to teach him how to play the game the right way. Not play dirty.
No,
not be dirty because I don't want. But play the game the right way. That's your bag. You're running to the bag. That's your bag. You run through the guy if he's standing there.
Right.
That's kind of how I taught him. Just play the game the right way and play it hard, and it'll all take care of itself in the end.
Nice. And this is only part one. I'm going to do another part two with Miguel, but here's something else. So we'll get into part two. I want to get more into high school and then how he ended up in college, what type of scholarship he received, and what he's going through now, different decisions that I've even talked to you about, like how you've got to figure out what, like your obviously education, what's really the priority in his life.
Right.
You now back to, do you think, because you basically sent them, if I'm not mistaken, a Catholic grade school his entire life, right? Middle school?
We sent him almost all the way through elementary school Catholic, and then we kind of pulled him out of Catholic school, sent him to a charter school, and then for his high school we sent him back to Catholic school.
Do you think him being raised in that environment helped him as far as structure goes compared to the charter, or because you have 3 children?
Yes.
And were you in a public school growing up?
I was public school all the way through, yeah.
Do you think this helped him, or wouldn't have made a difference necessarily?
I think it did help him, and I have my son, and then I have 2 daughters, and boys and girls are totally different. Animals, kids, different upbringing. The girls were always so structured, and they
Right.
they got their stuff done, and always. I remember my little one always wanted to be the number one in class in everything, whatever it was, whether
Sure.
books, reading books, or whatever. And Quentin was like, "What do I need to do to get by today?"
Right.
And I think the Catholic stuff, the Catholic schooling, kind of helped him with that, and is trying to focus more on his education. Because the school system, in the public school systems here in Orlando, back when he was in elementary school, there was just one teacher and you'd have 30-something kids.
Yeah.
And I was like, for boys, it's a little different. Boys are more, easily distracted. Girls seem to be able to focus.
Yeah.
But boys are like, distracted, easily distracted.
Yeah.
And so I put him in that Catholic school because I knew that they had, 20 kids, a teacher, and an assistant. And so he'd get a little bit more attention.
Right.
The teacher to student ratio was a lot better. And so that's why we did the Catholic school. But then we put him in a charter school because the charter school had even better numbers.
Gotcha.
Teacher to student ratios.
Right.
And so we put him in there in charter schools. And then when he went to high school, the high school that we were zoned for, their baseball program was a mess.
Gotcha.
And I was like, I can't put him in. I put all this time, money, and effort into
Right.
this kid, getting him to this point, and I'm gonna put him in a high school that has a different coach every year. And right. I'm like, no, I'm not gonna do that. So I put him at the local, at the only high school in Orlando.
It's one of the only ones I think in
the diocese.
What is it, like 30? Because that's where my daughters went there for grade school. They didn't go for high school. But I think Bishop Moore, what's the next Catholic high school? 60 miles? Tampa?
Yeah. There's one in, Daytona? I think,
Ormond Beach. I got you. So up
Father
there
Lopez.
north, which is near Daytona Beach, in case you're wondering where that's at.
Yeah, which is, it's a hall. But I think in the diocese there might be Bishop Moore, and maybe there's one. Maybe Melbourne is in the diocese. I don't know. But in Orlando, there's just the one.
Bishop Moore is an incredibly powerful school, because if anyone who's Catholic or wants their kids to go to a private Catholic school, they send their kids there, and there's a strong alum there for many, many years. Mm-hmm. It's, I think, one of the oldest schools in Orlando, just in general, right, as far as grade school, middle school, and high school.
Yeah.
So they have a lot of power and influence. It's not like say I'm from Chicago, there's a lot of different Catholic schools, and a lot of them do not have the facilities Bishop Moore has or the power, because it's kind of blend. There's so many different neighborhoods, and depending on what neighborhood you are, that's going to only, or I should say, contribute to the facility, I guess, right, the money behind that facility. Where Bishop Moore not only owns Orlando, they own, if we go out Lake Mary, Lake Brantley, it goes, Altamont, it could go to Lake Mary, it goes all the way to Dr. Phillips, it goes all the way to Kissimmee. I think people from Cocoa Beach.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then you could even go to Winter Garden. It keeps going almost all the way to Tampa.
Right.
So it has a huge following and a great school program. I mean, a great program for sports.
Great athletic program for sports. And so we made the decision to send him there, primarily because, again, because he did his part. we spent a lot of time, money, and effort in developing his baseball, and academically too. That we were like, I'm not gonna send him to this public school. That's it's a hot mess.
Yeah, and you're honest about it.
Yeah,
and you financially could afford it. I mean,
Yeah.
All right, I'm gonna wrap it up there. We're gonna come back for part 2. So let's end it here. And if you get a chance to, just in case you only listen to this podcast, you can listen to my other podcasts, obviously, as well. But I'm on YouTube, just my name, Rich CELENZA. You can find me on Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, and Facebook as well. All right, get ready for part 2.